Hello and welcome to Manny Beal. Long time no see, as they say. It's been a while since I did my last video. But let's let me get back into it so I don't lose my edge. Right? Okay, so why not take on one of the biggest issues in philosophy, right? The mind and matter problem. And as you can see, I've done a little writing here to help me get things across. And I will try to argue why there is a problem, but the problem is not that which they think it is, right? Because mind and matter are actually both abstractions. The problem is that they're both abstractions that are in them as an abstraction. They are not something that you can experience, right? One thinks the mind people think that they can explain everything using mind, including matter, right? The matter people think they can describe everything using matter, including mind. And there seems to be explanatory power in each of them to explain both of them. Now, I would say that matter, what you refer to when you talk about matter, is a phenomena in mind. If I'm experiencing an elephant, I'm saying that elephant is matter. But I only talked about that matter, which is in itself an abstraction, right? Because I had the experience, the sensual experience, the empiricism of elephant, right? Which is in mind, apparently, right? So it's both. Why are they dissociated, these two terms, these abstractions, and are there any connectivity? Are there some interdependency? And I sort of, I've alluded to that a lot of times before, right? I just think that matter is an abstraction based on a phenomena in mind, and mind itself is an abstraction, right? And mind and matter are two different kinds of abstractions. They are not compatible. You can't compare them, right? You can't compare mind with matter and say one have to be extracted from the other. It doesn't function that way, right? Okay, so first of all, I'll make one statement and a comment, right? And then I will take some Wikipedia definitions of these things and try to extract or deconstruct what they're actually saying. I'm not necessarily saying that Wikipedia is the end-all, be-all of defining these things, but on the other hand, if this sort of the mainstream accepted understanding, then this is as good a place to start deconstructing these ideas, understandings, or definitions as any, in my opinion, right? It usually gets really convoluted and academic if you go to somewhere like Stanford and you have to read 78 pages on what matter is, and you're only more confused or confused on a higher level, right? So I like the precision and concisiveness of Wikipedia, though it might not be perfect, right? You have to always think for yourself. Remember that. If any takeaway from this course or any other course or presentation I make is think for yourself, right? Okay, so mind and matter, in my opinion, these are my opinions before that little quote with Wikipedia down below. Maybe it's not the best idea. It looks like what I've just written up there in italics is from Wikipedia, but it's what below the term Wikipedia in my presentation that is actually a reference to Wikipedia. It's the top two things here that are sort of my statement, right? Mind and matter are both abstractions appealing to being foundations of something you actually have direct access to. That is the actual problem, right? They are both abstractions, and then people expect to be able to extract one from the other. So they take two abstractions and then they say, how do these two combine? It's ridiculous, right? And this is the problem in both science and philosophy. If you don't realize that both mind and matter are abstractions, you're going to end up in just a series of weird cloud castles that is only going to confuse people and yourself more, right? You're only going to end up in a huge knot of abstractions, of further abstractions, right? Another way to see this is, how do you experience mind, right? How do you experience mind? Or do you experience mind? I don't, right? What color does mind have? What sound does mind have? What taste does it have? My own mind or other minds for that matter, right? I'm not experiencing mind. Be very, that's why I like skepticism, right? Skeptics is always, am I actually experiencing that, right? And if you let go of, but I don't need to experience that. I have some ideas and thoughts that I like, and therefore I have philosophy. No. Be careful, right? Because the starting point of all philosophy is ontology. And ontology is a description of your experiences and clarifying and classifying them and finding a starting point which you use to describe the rest of your experience. In other words, the reduction base, which is, in my opinion, the senses, the five qualia, right? Color, sound, taste, and so on. And you use that to describe the rest of your ontology. Otherwise, you're just coming up with shit. I would have to deduce that. I will have to conclude that. You're just using preconceived ideas of how things are supposed to be understood and just throwing them at me because you want it, right? If you can't start from within the thinking, you have to start from within the ontology to describe your ontology, so to say, right? You have to use something within it in order to describe it, because that's your starting point, right? Okay. So the mind-matter problem is actually that they are both terms are abstractions. They are not some direct experience. That is the actual problem. Okay. Furthermore, matter is actually an abstraction from phenomena of which the faculty mind is considered responsible, right? So matter is, in this sense, is an aspect of mind. And I'm hesitating to use these terms, right? Because then I'm sort of implying that mind is something that I have access to. I don't. It's just a term used. It's just a description of something I don't have access to, right? But if you, in that sense, used mind as a catch-all term for all phenomena, one or some of these phenomena are responsible for my abstraction called mind. When I experience the elephant and I drop it from the Eiffel Tower, right? And it behaves in a particular way. I say it's made of matter because it does that. So my abstraction matter from the elephant is based on my sensual experience, my empiricism of elephant, right? So therefore matter is actually an abstraction of phenomena. Matter is a mental idea based on observation of how things behave, right? Matter is an abstraction. It doesn't exist in the sense you can say that it exists. You are claiming that because you experience elephant and you call it's made of matter because when I throw it from the Eiffel Tower, it behaves the same way as a beaver and so on and so on and so on. Your car and your soft ice when you drop it from the Eiffel Tower. It's all made of matter. But that is an abstract step where you're saying, I'm not experiencing matter, but what I'm experiencing, that substance, whatever, right, is made of that which I have abstracted called matter because they behave the same way when I throw them from the Eiffel Tower. That's abstract, right? Or that's my way of putting terms on it, right? I call it abstraction. It's abstracted. It is extracted somehow from my experience, right? Well, the same goes with mind. I don't experience mind, but And there's also some other subtext of the idea of mind, which I think is important, which is, I'll get back to that, right? But it's like, I'm using a term for all the phenomena because there are so many, right? There are thinkings and imaginations, and, I'm remembering that there is memory and qualia, all these things going on, emotions and desires and, God knows what, right? I don't want to bring God into this, right? I'll just call it all, it goes on in mind, right? I'm just put a big label on everything, call it mind. It's sort of a meta approach to mind. I'm abstracting something that, because it seems to be interconnected within me, something, I call it mind, right? And then people like Bernardo Castor would go and say, but then it's all made of mind then, right? Which is another category violation, right? Okay, so if we take the definitions, and let's see, I can fit it all. Yeah, I can fit it all in one picture here. And let me see if I can make it a little bigger here. Yeah. Mind, according to Wikipedia, right? Mind is that which thinks, imagines, remembers, wills, and senses. Or in other words, the set of faculties responsible for such phenomena, right? Or not in other words, or is the set of faculties responsible? It's either that which is an appeal to one thing that is responsible, or maybe a set of faculties, which is a rather fluffy way of putting it, maybe, right? That is responsible. It might not be, when they say that, it might not be that one thing that is responsible for all these phenomena, right? But there might be a set of faculties responsible for such phenomena, right? So they're saying, okay, there might be one thing, there might be more than one thing responsible, right? Now then mind is a category. It's an abstraction. It just falls out of the definition, right? It's a description. It's a category of the set of faculties responsible for the phenomena, which are those you have actually access to: thinking, imagining, remembering, willing, and sensing, and so on, right? So therefore, it's an abstraction, man, right? I mean, it's why is it hard to see? It's not hard to see unless you don't want to see it that way, right? It's basically, it falls out of the definition. I've commented here, right? Mind is, as I usually say, a catch-all term for phenomena, which has been skewed then to be responsible for phenomena, right? Syntax. It's a syntax, linguistic category error. It's I'm calling it all mind, and therefore it has slided into mind is responsible for it, right? I think that's how it goes on. Well, in my mind, there are these phenomena, thinkings and imaginations and remembers, and there it has been skewed into, therefore mind is responsible for it. I think that's a red herring, possibly, right? It is a self-induced red herring of understanding that, okay, because I used the term, there must be something that the term refers to, and therefore that which is being referred to using mind is that which must be responsible for whatever is a phenomena, right? It's all linguistic, right? Mind is just a catch-all term for all the phenomena you have access to, right? Mind, you can say, okay, where does it come from? And I will call that mind. Okay, but then there's a very poor choice of words, because mind is a catch-all term for all the phenomena. Then mind cannot be that which is responsible for it, right? If you're calling it all elephants, right? Animals, then it would be the same as saying that animal is responsible for elephant, right? An elephant is an animal. They're all animals. Therefore, animal is responsible for elephant. That's fucking stupid, right? But it's exactly what is being done with mind, right? it does not mean that there is not something responsible. But just because a catch-all term has been applied, it does not mean that there must be access to some kind of underlying factor called mind that can or has to be clarified. What I'm trying to say is, and it is a bit convoluted maybe, right? Just because you use the term doesn't mean there must be something underlying. If I come up with a term called oggy-goggy, right? Then somebody would have to say, what is oggy-goggy? Well, now I made a word, now I have to explain what it is, right? If I made a word, how would I explain what it is? Well, I would have to refer to something you can experience, right? Or I would be a manipulative sophist. I'm going into, yeah, but try to imagine a ripple or something like that. Imagine ripples. And that's what it is, right? No. It's this thing that if somebody claims something you can't experience, you might want to say, I don't know. But by saying, I don't know, you are implying that knowledge is possible. You just don't have the knowledge. But because they claim they have knowledge, you might fall into the trap of thinking they are an authority on this particular kind of knowledge, right? Or insight, whatever term. Therefore, it's so fucking important that these aspects of philosophy could be settled in a very skeptical, clear, and unambiguous way. So that when you're using particular terms, there's sort of an agreement of what the fuck you mean when you use that term, right? And when you go on YouTube, for instance, right? Maybe that's not, but that's where I go to get my inspiration for thinking, right? I'm not going for conclusions. I'm going for inspirations for thinking. Like that's a there's a clear difference there, right? That these terms, knowledge and facts and mind and matter and science, it's all just thrown around in a big fucking gumbo without any clarification, right? Or very little, right? And when I listen to, and that goes for both idealists and physicalists, right? If you want to make that dichotomy, and panpsychists, whatever, it's just one gumbo of words, right? These terms needs to be settled because they're so foundational. If this foundation isn't settled and people understand what they're saying, it doesn't matter how much philosophy is being done because nobody the fuck has any clue what is going on, right? And it will also usually end up in an idea of authority. There are these academics over there. They have at least 2 PhDs, so they must be an authority on this kind of thinking. Just sit down and listen and obey, right? It's the fucking worst and most stupid idea, right? It's the one-eyed rulers of the blind, right? Okay. If we take matter, which is also a definition from Wikipedia, right? It is any substance that has a mass and takes up space by having volume. Now, a difference that I spotted between these two definitions is mind starts out by being singular. There's one thing. There's that which thinks, imagines, remembers, wills, and senses, right? That is monistic in its approach. But they just come with a caveat saying, or the set of faculties responsible for such phenomena. So there might not be just one faculty behind all these phenomena. There might be a set of faculties, right? So the monistic idealists are sort of challenged a bit, right? But in the definition of matter, it is any substance, right? A substance is a subset of all substance. That's why it's said any, right? So there's not one. There's an appeal to diversity in the understanding of matter, right? It's any substance. So there can be different substances. Why are there different substances, right? That's not the thinking when you're doing mind. It is that which thinks, imagines, and remembers, wills, and senses, right? Okay. So there's an appeal to things are being settled. This is how it is in mind. Where matter is any substance that you might come across, right? It's an appeal to you. You have to go out and experience these substances or any of these substances, right? And if it has a mass and it takes up space, then it's matter, right? It takes up space by having volume, right? If it has mass and volume and thereby takes up space, it is matter, right? I try to allude to this idea of matter using the example of the Eiffel Tower, the Earth and the Eiffel Tower and the beaver. And if I drop the beaver from the Eiffel Tower, it falls, as they call, to Earth. But if I did it with my old Volvo or with my grandmother, whatever, right? Don't do that with your grandmothers, right? Only mother-in-laws, right? Or my soft ice or my bicycle, it would behave the same way, right? The abstraction with matter is all these substances, because they apparently have volume and because they move in this particular fashion, they seem to have what I call mass, which is they are made up of matter, right? Mass is an amount of matter. So matter is convoluted into the idea of mass. So it's actually a circular definition, this, right? If matter is any substance that is made out of matter. Mass is a collection of matter, right? So therefore, mass is a poor choice of words here. I might have pointed that. I just figured that out now, right? Mass is an appeal to matter. So, and you can use matter in a definition of matter, right? So this is a stupid definition. But it just goes to show these are abstractions, right? You don't need to define an elephant, right? You don't need it. An elephant is something that is a kind of substance that takes up space by having volume. Sort of. No. You just experience it. People are not asking for definitions of elephants, right? Because that's the direct experience and cognition of something, right? But matter is an abstraction. That's why you need a definition. Because you need a definition, it's because it's an abstraction, right? Okay, by substance, and that should have been read, is an appeal to empiricism, right? You can have substance, you can think of substance maybe, but there is no idea of substance without any kind of experience, right? So it's an observation that is classified as substance, which is an appeal to sense. Empiricism is an appeal to senses, right? Colors and sounds and so on, which is a part of the faculties or the phenomena of mind. So you're using that which has been labeled mind in order to get to that which you define as matter, right? So that's the connection between mind and matter. Matter is an abstraction of a particular phenomena going on in another abstraction called mind. Okay, volume is an appeal to space, which is, in my opinion, not empiricism. It is an abstraction from the experience. This is a blemish of that particular color, therefore it has an extension, right? It's circular. So what I mean by that is I have a phenomena called red or gray or whatever, right? Gray. And because I have that gray, it must have extension. If it doesn't have extension, I wouldn't have the experience of gray. But because I have the experience of gray, there is a blemish. There is an extension to that gray area. Therefore, it has extension. But it was because it has the extension that I had the ability, apparently, to experience the color gray, right? So it's also, volume is an appeal to space, but in my opinion, space is a part of your what is going on in your in the presentation. The colors, the sounds, and so on, maybe the colors, right, is being presented in your experience in a spatial manner. And you wouldn't be able, if the color didn't have extension or volume, you could say, in a three-dimensional space, you wouldn't experience it. But when you experience it, it's because it has volume. So you have to experience the substance first, and because you experience the substance, it must have volume. Otherwise, you wouldn't experience it. So it's circular to say it has volume now that you experience it, but you can't experience it without having volume, right? And that's also an appeal to why space is a sort of mental thing, you could say, right? It's a part of your experience. It's created by the same sort of faculty that is responsible for the other phenomena, right? So, it takes up space. It's an appeal to empiricism and causation. Observing the immediate surrounding substances relative to the substance in question, and appealing to how the substance in question causes something on these other substances, right? It's like takes up space. Okay, so this thing does something to its surroundings. That's a bit of a problem, defining something by what it does to its surroundings. Don't you need the definition of those surroundings in order to clarify what is being done to them? So it appealed to an already settled idea of the substances around the substance you're trying to define, right? That is also a very bad definition, in my opinion, right? And you're appealing to what it does. It always does the same thing. That's an appeal to causation. Well, as you would probably know, causation is not something you can experience. You can just observe. When I have this thing here, it usually, in my past experiences, in my memory, it used to behave like this, right? But that doesn't mean it's going to do it in the future. There is no necessary connection between some object and its surroundings, right? That I'm not saying there isn't, because I can't say that either. But just because I have experienced something before means that there's some connecting glue between these kinds of objects, right? How would I get to that? I can't experience anything, right? There's no colors, there's no sounds, there's no taste, just like Hume criticized, right? So there's some underlying stuff going on here, like causation and an idea of already predefined surrounding substances that can help define your particular substance. Well, that's a circular argument, right? So there are all sorts of problems that needs to be settled, right? It is settling all this shit here, right, is the single most important aspect of philosophy, in my opinion. Because we can't get to any idea of knowledge or ethics unless we get this done, right? This has to be settled if we want to go anywhere, right? And we have to agree upon it. Or at least somebody has to agree on something. And it has to be bulletproof, right? The definition have to be fucking sharp like Japanese kitchen knives, right? We can't go on in this gumbo of people just throwing around terms and thinking they have come up with some solution. It doesn't fucking work, right? And it's only going to give philosophy and science, for that matter, a bad name, right? Fuck off with all your delusional ideas of how either mind or matter is going to solve anything. These are just abstractions, man, right? It's, well, how can I put it? it is of the utmost importance, right? This is where it starts, right? This is where it starts. This is what needs to be dealt with, right? If we can't get our grasp on this, it doesn't matter, right? Philosophy is fucked. If we can't get this settled, if we can't get to an agreement on the settlement of this, it's all fucked, right? And if we've been going on this for going on 3,000 years since, the old sages of the Greek philosophical world, right? And nobody seems to get anywhere close to settling this, right? They all have their little groups. I'm an illusionist. I'm an idealist. I'm a metaphysicalist. I'm a whatever, right? It has to encompass all of it. It has to be neutral in the sense that it is going for the clearest and strictest and on the spot, to the point, understanding, or not understanding, description of how it works. And I'm not saying there can only be one, right? There can be many. But I would like some kind of, I would hope for some kind of free market in philosophy, where it's like, these people came up with these ideas of philosophy, of foundational philosophy, mind and matter and whatever, all these things, right? And the underlying phenomena and understandings and so on, right? How they are interconnected and how they're not interconnected, and, what is just abstractions and what are actually experienced and so on, right? But if somebody wants to do something else, let them do it, right? At the end of the day, the best philosopher, the best philosophy will end up creating the most happy people, the most well-functioning people, the most admirable people, maybe you could say, right? The most virtuous people. Those who are, dying on the streets, covered in their own shit philosophy, might not be as good as those with happy families and healthy children and no pollution. And, I'm not saying that, but there is something to it, right? And what is to it is that, not that I am right because there are flowers in my garden, but because those who are living in shit with needles up their ass, right, might want to say, maybe there's something wrong with my philosophy, right? What about those who are living in, Sound of Music, right? Maybe they're doing something right. What is their philosophy? Let me go and check it out. What are their arguments, right? So it's working from inspiration rather than authority. Decentralized philosophy is the way forward, right? It's like Tolkien's, the most extraordinary, events can come from the smallest source, the little hobbit carrying the ring to Mordor, right? Who says it can't be the little, hobbit who saves the world, right? Why does it have to be, the ringwraiths of academia, who's just sucking you dry, taxing you into oblivion, in order to go and say, we have been thinking about this for almost 3,000 years. It's just around the corner, right? Fuck off, man, right? Okay. I hope you enjoyed. Please share, like, and subscribe. Give me a comment. What do you think of this? What is your mind on this matter? Consider donation, links below, and also on the board there are links to crypto donation. And beyond that, have a nice day. See you in the next one.